You know, we're surrounded by these systems, built on rules we're told are unbreakable. But what if they're not? What if the same crack runs through all of them?
Think about a casino. It's supposed to be a fortress of pure chance, right? Every spin, every hand, it's a clean slate. The odds are set in stone.
And then you have the financial market. We're told it's the pinnacle of logic. Every price reflects everything we know, instantly. It's supposed to be a random walk.
These two worlds, gambling and finance, they share this one core belief. They are systems designed by experts to be impartial, perfect, and ultimately impossible to consistently beat. But then one man, a quiet math professor named Ed Thorpe, he looked at these perfect systems and saw something else. He realized that the people running the games, the people playing them, they didn't really get it. Now, this isn't a story about luck. It's not about some traditional kind of genius. This is the story of a man who found a universal flaw, a hidden rule, and used it to systematically take apart the systems everyone else thought were invincible. So let's start our investigation right where he did, on the green felt tables of Las Vegas in the early 1960s. The target was blackjack, a game the casinos assured everyone was a surefire way to lose your money. The casinos all operated on this one simple belief. Every hand of blackjack is totally independent from the last. But Thorpe's insight was almost laughably simple. He realized they were wrong. See, unlike a slot machine, the cards that are played don't go back into the deck. The deck has a memory. And if the deck has a memory, that means the odds aren't fixed at all. They are constantly changing with every card that hits the table. And this wasn't just a hunch. Thorpe was a professor at MIT. He used one of the most powerful computers of that era, an IBM 704, to simulate millions and millions of hands. He proved, with absolute mathematical certainty, that you could track that shifting advantage. He could know the exact moment the game tipped from favoring the house to favoring the player. He literally turned a game of chance into a game of information. And then he did something truly insane. He published The Blueprint. His book, Beat the Dealer, didn't just lay out his theory. It gave regular people a simple system, card counting, to exploit the flaw for themselves. He didn't just break into the casino. He made over 1 million copies of the key and handed them out to the public. Well, a supposedly perfect system doesn't really like being told it's flawed. The reaction from the casinos wasn't a polite debate. It was more like a violent immune response to a virus. At first, it was just denial. They called his math impossible. When that didn't work, they just changed their own rules. They added more decks to try and weaken the deck's memory. Then they just started cheating, using dealers who could manipulate the cards. When he adapted with disguises, they just kicked him out. And finally, when none of that worked, the system turned violent. His drink was drugged. Someone even tampered with his car's accelerator on a highway in the middle of the desert. The lesson was pretty clear. When its profits were on the line, the system forgot all about its own rules of fairness and chance. Thorpe realized the real game here wasn't about math, it was about survival. So he took his money and went looking for a bigger casino. He pivoted to what he called the greatest gambling arena on Earth, Wall Street. And to him, this wasn't a new problem. It was just the same game, but played on a planetary scale. His hypothesis was simple, really. If a casino, a system literally designed to be random, had a fatal flaw baked into its logic, then the stock market, a system run by thousands of emotional human beings, had to be absolutely riddled with them. And wouldn't you know it, the pattern was exactly the same. Wall Street's dogma was the efficient market hypothesis, this idea that markets are perfect and totally unpredictable. Thorpe saw that this so-called efficiency was just an illusion. Sure, to an uninformed person, the market looks random, but to someone with better analytical tools, those little mispricings were everywhere. He just had to find them. And found them he did. He launched one of the world's very first quantitative hedge funds. And while the rest of the market was going up and down like a yo-yo, Thorpe's fund delivered an incredible 19.1% average return, year after year for nearly 2 decades, with almost no volatility. He was just exploiting tiny, predictable pricing errors, just like he'd exploited the changing cards in a deck. So let's just pause for a second. He beat the casinos, he beat the market, and he published books about how he did it. Which leads to the single most important question in this whole story. If the blueprint is public, why did so many people who tried to copy him fail? What was the real barrier to entry? Was it intelligence? Money? The actual answer is way more unsettling.
First off, let's be clear, this wasn't luck. In almost 20 years of trading, his fund lost money in only 3 individual months. 3. The statistical probability of that happening in an efficient market is basically 0. His edge was real. It was mathematical. And yet, almost no one could stand it. The real barrier was something called variance. It's the simple, unavoidable fact that even with a winning strategy, you will have losing streaks. You can do everything right and still lose money for days, weeks, maybe even months. It is a mathematical certainty. And for most people, it's an emotional nightmare that just breaks.
And right there, that is the true flaw Thorpe discovered. It wasn't in the math of the casino. It wasn't in the algorithms of the market. The flaw was in us. It's our human inability to stay rational when we're under pressure, to stick to a proven system when your gut is screaming and the crowd is panicking. Intelligence was never the hard part. Temperament was. When you zoom out, Thorpe's entire career stops being about money. It starts to look like a giant stress test for the very systems we all live inside. He found the same pattern no matter where he looked. Systems that forget their own rules, run by people who are ruled by emotion. The casino forgot that cards have a history. Wall Street forgot that prices are tied to reality. And the people in charge of both were driven by simple fear and greed. He didn't find 1,000 different flaws. He found the same one over and over and over again. So Thorpe's story isn't really a lesson in how to get rich. It's a warning. It suggests that the big institutions we rely on aren't the fortresses of logic we think they are. They're fragile. They're run by flawed humans. And it leaves you with this one very uncomfortable question. If one person could find the same fundamental flaw in every system he looked at, what does that say about all the other systems everyone else trusts?